The ground is still. There is no wind, no predator circling the tree line, no storm gathering on the horizon. By every measure your eyes and ears can offer, this is a perfectly ordinary afternoon on the plains of Sri Lanka. The grass moves in small, lazy waves. A pair of egrets pick their way through the mud near the waterhole. Everything is exactly as it should be. And yet, something is wrong. You can see it in the way the largest elephant lifts her foot, slowly, deliberately, as if she is listening through the earth itself. The others notice her. One by one, the calves are nudged toward the center of the herd. Trunks rise. Those enormous, ancient ears fan wide, spreading open like satellite dishes, tuning into a frequency no human instrument in the area is detecting. The egrets freeze. Even they feel the shift in the herd's attention. Then, without a single sound passing between them, every elephant turns and runs. 4 minutes later, the ground tears open. What just happened here is not mythology. It is not coincidence. It is one of the most quietly extraordinary things a living creature does on this planet. And for a very long time, science had absolutely no explanation for it. If you have ever felt that the natural world holds secrets we have not yet earned the right to understand, stay with this. Because what elephants are doing before an earthquake is stranger and more profound than anything you were told in school. If stories like this reach something in you, the kind that leave you sitting quietly after they end, there is a subscribe button below this video. Press it. This channel exists for exactly these moments. Let us go back to the beginning of this mystery. Not to the earthquake, to the silence before it. Wildlife researchers and park rangers working across seismically active regions, from southern India to the Indonesian archipelago to the eastern coast of Africa, had been noticing a pattern for decades. Before major ground events, animals behaved strangely. Not just elephants. Birds abandoned trees they had roosted in for years. Snakes emerged from burrows hours before any measurable tremor registered on equipment. Flamingos lifted from lake beds they had occupied for entire seasons and moved inland without warning. Dogs refused to enter buildings. Cattle pressed themselves against the far walls of their enclosures and would not move. The animals were leaving, collectively, calmly, with a purpose that no visible threat could explain. The scientific community was reluctant to take these reports seriously for a long time. Anecdotal, uncontrolled, impossible to replicate in a laboratory. The observations sat in field journals and ranger logs, accumulating quietly, waiting for someone willing to look at them without embarrassment. Then, December 26, 2004 happened, and the world could no longer look away. The Indian Ocean earthquake that morning was among the most powerful ever recorded in human history. The tsunami it triggered killed over 200,000 people across 14 countries. Entire coastlines were erased. The destruction arrived with almost no warning for the communities standing in its path. But at Yala National Park on the southern coast of Sri Lanka, one of the regions hit with the full force of the wave, something emerged from the aftermath that no one could easily explain. The animals were alive. Not some of them, not most of them. The elephants, the leopards, the spotted deer, the water buffalo, the crocodiles, they had moved. Hours before the wave arrived, long before any human warning system triggered, the wildlife of Yala had relocated toward higher ground. Elephants reportedly broke the chains tying them to tourism posts. Animals that had been sedentary for weeks began moving with direction and urgency their handlers had never witnessed before. The wave came. The park flooded. But the animal death toll was almost non-existent. 200,000 human lives, and a park full of animals that somehow knew to leave. How? The answer does not begin in the sky. It does not live in mysticism or instinct alone. It begins far beneath your feet, in the ground itself, and in the extraordinary, almost unbelievable engineering of the elephant's body. Before any earthquake, long before the violent rupture we recognize as the event itself. Tectonic plates begin to shift, quietly, slowly. What moves first is not the catastrophic break. That comes later. What moves first are micro-tremors, tiny vibrations traveling through deep bedrock at frequencies so low that no human ear can detect them. These are called infrasonic waves, sound that exists below the floor of human perception. Elephants do not merely hear these waves, they feel them. This is not a metaphor. This is anatomy. Beneath the thick, padded sole of each elephant foot lies one of the most sophisticated pressure sensing systems found anywhere in the animal kingdom. Densely packed nerve endings and specialized receptor cells, called Pacinian corpuscles, sit just beneath the surface, tuned to detect vibrations moving through solid ground. When a micro-tremor rolls through bedrock, even one originating 300 kilometers away, the elephant feels it. Through her feet, through the dense bones of her legs, through her jaw, which researchers have observed her pressing flat against the ground in what is now understood to be a deliberate act of listening. But the feet are only part of the system. The elephant's skull is, among other things, a natural infrasound receiver. The specific geometry of bone density and hollow air chambers inside an elephant's head is built through millions of years of evolution to receive and amplify low-frequency vibrations. Elephants use infrasound to communicate with each other across distances that would astonish you. Calls so deep they pass through solid rock and wet soil. Messages traveling kilometers underground, beneath your hearing entirely, connecting herds separated by entire valleys. These animals evolved to listen to the earth, not as a metaphor, as a biological function. So when the earth begins to speak, in its lowest, quietest register, hours before a fault line finally gives way, elephants receive that communication. They feel the warning moving through the ground beneath their feet. They hear it in frequencies that exist below the threshold of every instrument your civilization initially thought to build in earthquake zones. This is the moment where science, for all its rigor, had to sit down and be genuinely humbled. Seismographs detect an earthquake after it begins. Elephants appear to detect the signals that precede it, the slow pressure build, the deep vibrational whisper moving through the planet's crust in the hours and minutes before catastrophic rupture. The elephant is not predicting. The elephant is hearing an arrival. Pause on that. The animal standing in your mind right now, enormous, ancient, moving at what seems like the unhurried pace of the world itself, is running a sensory system that outperforms our most sensitive early warning technology. And it has been doing this for millions of years, long before we had a word for seismology, long before we understood what tectonic plates were. If you find yourself wanting to share this mid-video, do it, because the next part of this story is where it becomes genuinely unsettling. It is not only earthquakes. Researchers tracking elephant herds across Amboseli National Park in Kenya documented a behavior that took years to interpret. The herd would change direction suddenly, not fleeing a predator, not following water or seasonal grass, simply turning and walking purposefully in a new direction for days at a time. No visible cause, no obvious environmental trigger. When researchers mapped those movements against seismic and meteorological records, the pattern became impossible to dismiss. The herds had moved away from regions where elevated seismic activity occurred in the days after their departure. They were not reacting to events, they were moving before them. The sensitivity this implies is difficult to sit with comfortably. An animal this large is receiving information from the planet that your most sophisticated equipment sometimes fails to catch. It is processing that information, sharing it through the herd through mechanisms science still does not fully understand, and making collective navigational decisions based on data arriving from hundreds of kilometers beneath the surface. The elephant herd is not a group of animals. In moments like this, it functions like a living seismic network, distributed, ancient, extraordinarily sensitive. There are now serious research teams studying elephant movement as a potential component of earthquake early warning systems. Not folklore, not metaphor, legitimate, peer-reviewed seismic research. If elephants in a given region begin moving together with unusual speed and collective direction, that data, integrated with other geological signals, could give human communities additional minutes of warning before a major event arrives. The elephant, in other words, may one day save your life. But here is the thought that stays long after the science settles. Elephants did not evolve this sensitivity in order to predict earthquakes. They evolved it because the Earth speaks constantly, in vibrations too low for human perception. In frequencies that travel through rock and groundwater and compressed soil for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. The world beneath your feet is never truly silent. It is a continuous, layered conversation. Geological pressure, tectonic friction, the slow movement of deep heat, the weight of mountain ranges pressing on the mantle beneath them. You were born without the ability to hear it. That is not a failure. It is simply a different kind of animal. The elephant walks through a version of this world that is richer in information than the one you inhabit. Every step is a conversation with the ground beneath it. Every movement of the herd reflects signals passed through rock and bone and millions of years of accumulated biological intelligence. They are not living in the same world you live in. They are living in a deeper one that existed long before cities, long before instruments, long before the concept of an earthquake had a name in any human language. And on a morning in December 2004, that older, deeper world sent a warning through the ground. The animals received it. They moved. The wave arrived. There is something that does not easily leave you about that fact. Something that quietly asks you to reconsider what intelligence means, and what kind of knowing we have spent centuries dismissing because it arrived in a form we could not measure. The herd at Yala is quiet again now. The park has been rebuilt, the tourists returned. The elephants are moving through the long grass in the late afternoon light, unhurried, deliberate, carrying that particular quality of presence that makes them seem like they have always been here and always will be. Maybe they are simply grazing. Or maybe, right now, one of them has lifted her foot and is feeling something move through the ground beneath her. Something quiet, something deep, something traveling from far away. And the rest of the herd, without a word, is already beginning to turn. The ground beneath your feet is not silent. It never was. You simply never had the ears to hear it. If this is the kind of story that changes the way you see the world around you, this channel is where those stories live. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Walk outside after this and put your hand on the nearest tree. And remember that the world is communicating in frequencies you were never built to receive. The next story is already waiting, and it will find you.